I'm gonna do this. I gotta do this.
I think you've got to do this.
I gotta do this. In second place, representing G&B Los Angeles, Charles Babinski. First place, your U.S. Barista Champion, Layla Gambari, Cherry Street Coffee House, Seattle, Washington. Huge round of applause for all your competitors. Amazing job. All of our judges and sponsors, all your family and friends, the industry behind you, the future in front of you, Specialty Coffee.
So as you can tell, that was a really big moment. That was the culmination of over 10 years of barista experience, 4 years of barista competition experience, and 5 straight months of preparing for that competition. Even just watching that over again, I have a hard time believing it was real. Before I dive in too much into our story, I want to first make sure everybody understands what a barista competition is. The World Barista Competition started in the year 2000, and 14 years later, we have nearly 60 countries that participate. This year, we crowned Hide, our World Barista Champion from Japan. In 2011, we had our first champion from a producing country, Alejandro Mendez from El Salvador. And the year following that was Raul from Guatemala. Of the 14 World Barista Champions, all of them are men. Hopefully that will change soon. What a barista competition is that the countries each produce their own national competition and crown their respective champion. What the baristas need to do is produce in a single espresso, a single cappuccino, and then create their own signature beverage that they present to 4 sensory judges. The sensory judges evaluate the taste and the appearance and the overall professionalism of the barista. There's also 2 technical judges that are watching their every move to make sure that they're precise and clean. I competed in my first barista competition 5 years ago. It was the Northwest Regional Barista Competition, and I placed 3rd. And I went on to our national competition, and I got to the semifinals. The following year, I did the same thing. I got 3rd place in my region, and then made the semifinals of the nationals. And then next year after that, I got 2nd place in the Northwest Regionals and made the semifinals. So I've done okay in competition, but never really great. In 2013, I decided to take the year off. I wanted to get a chance to judge the competitions as well as help other competitors learn how to compete. But at the beginning of this year, I started a new job. I started working for my father at Cherry Street Coffee House. We have 10 locations in the city of Seattle, and it's been around for over 20 years. So Cherry Street is very well known in the city of Seattle, but it's not very well known in the specialty coffee world. And so I thought a way that I could help present it to the specialty coffee world would be to compete again. At Cherry Street, we use coffee from Delano's Coffee Roasters. So I knew that my first step was to sit down with them and figure out what coffees that they had that I could use for the competition. So I sat down with Phil.
So it was almost a year ago exactly that Layla approached me and expressed interest in really going after the barista competition circuit and putting some effort into creating something that was unique and that would resonate with that competition. But it wasn't a year ago that story actually started. This story actually started in 2003 when Layla was only 17 years old. And in 2003, I attended an event called the Roasters Guild Retreat. The Roasters Guild is a body in the United States of roasters, and they have a retreat once a year. And it was in 2003 that I actually met this incredible man that was the president of the SCAA at the time. I think his name was David Griswold, I think that was his name. And I also met another incredible person that's seated right here, Emilio Lopez Diaz. And so that was when I came in contact with this whole idea of synergy and collaboration. And so when Layla approached me a year ago, I knew immediately, even before she finished her sentence of asking me if we were interested in collaborating on this, I already knew immediately who I was going to talk to. And so that idea of collaboration and of competition is really fascinating to me. I think through these competitions, that's how we can grow. So when Layla approached me, I knew exactly who I wanted to contact. I also was very excited personally because I knew this was the great opportunity of this year for me to expand my horizons and for me to learn. I think through competition, it provides that stimulation for you to push yourself and for you to find new horizons, new techniques, new methods of how you go about doing your business. I was inspired this morning in the session when I was listening to Carlos Brando talking about Brazil and how they really approach their coffee culture and how they process with that competitive nature. And so I think it's important for us to think about that competition is a good thing. When competition is approached, competition, I had this thought before I came up here, when you approach competition without collaboration, it divides. But when you approach competition with collaboration, it unites. And so that's what we wanted to do in this moment was find a way to unite our supply chain, this world-class supply chain, and go after and achieve something that none of us could have achieved individually. And it's not that any of us are totally original. None of the things that we were doing at any point in this process were unique and they'd never been done before. I think it was Albert Einstein who said, history does not repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. So we didn't create some new magical thing that nobody had ever done before. And any greatness that we achieved is echoes of the greatness that's in this room and of the people that have done amazing things here. So I called Emilio and asked him if he would be interested in working with us. Of course he said yes, because we're fun people, right? And so that process was just so awesome, but the emphasis is on that this relationship that we're going to continue to tell you about and this story didn't start a year ago. It really started years and years ago and was fostered through relationships that are developed when you work with people like Sustainable Harvest, when you come to things like Let's Talk Coffee or get involved in things like the Roasters Guild. This community is really what develops special new ways to conduct business that can create these world-class supply chains that we talk about. So I'll pass it off to Emilio, because Emilio, I called you, and Emilio and I both are fans of the barista competition circuit and follow it very closely. Emilio had worked with other barista competitors before, and so both of us were immediately aware of Layla's capability to be something really incredible, that she has that dedication and that passion for the product and for the process. So Emilio, I called you, and what were your thoughts?
Well, first, just like Phil said, we actually met back in 2003. As a farmer, when I actually got into business, one of the first things that I really wanted to know and understand is just if as a farmer I want to sell a product, I first need to understand who's going to be consuming it, who's going to be roasting it, who's going to be trying to know the other end of the industry before even starting as a farmer. So the first thing that I did actually, I reached out to the organizations that were available then and that still are supporting the industry, which are the Roasters Guild, the SCAA. So one of the first things I did again back in 2002 was become a member of the Roasters Guild. This is where we met. Layla as well been a member of the BGA. So those are two organizations under the SCAA that actually I think that's a big reason why we're standing here in front of you today. So Phil and I, again, go back 11 years now. Again, as a farmer, getting to go to these places, you kind of understand what you get to know and see and talk and do a lot of networking and get to really see what roasters and even baristas are looking for, and like how to blend for a perfect espresso, how to produce and process, what are the things that need to be present in a cup of coffee for it to stand out, and just the whole process itself. So for the last 11 years, I've been in El Salvador, that's where I'm originally from, trying to get and develop, because I only have pretty much 2 farms, and I'm also a roaster, trying to develop pretty much a product of its own that works as an espresso, as drip coffee, as various brewing methods. So again, he called me back in December, and he's like, well, I have this project for you. Are you interested? This is our idea. Leila and I talked about it about a month ago. Immediately I said yes, right? So a week later, we're on a Skype call, us 3. And pretty much one thing also that got us here, or USBC, and onto the world stage, is that we had a leader with us. And Leila took that, that role from the very, very beginning of the call. And I think that actually kept us all through our journey in focus. And like, that's one thing that you had always, like, she was always calming us down, and like, she knew exactly what, needed to be done. And that's one of the biggest reasons, again, that we made it so far. So, on the first call, we talked, or she laid down like her ideas on like what the routine she wanted to do on this, first the Westerns. So it was all about collaboration and about using a coffee from a state, or a single estate. So we're working with a single origin espresso, or a single estate espresso. And then so the conversation moved into, okay, what roles are we each going to take? So while Leila was explaining to us the theme or the routine that she was going to be working on, Phil started also, what do I need to do as the roaster? I'm going to be importing the coffee. I'm going to, all of my team at Delano's need to know what's going to happen, and keep everyone informed. On my part as well, I needed to tell all my staff and all my team what was going to happen, because in this kind of things, all your team needs to be on the same page. There's so many little details that are involved in this that if you're not fully engaged as a team, things start falling apart. So Phil right away suggested that Delano's would take an origin trip to El Salvador. And again, the conversation moved on like, okay, each one is going to take different roles, and so on. December, so I'm just beginning the harvest. El Salvador's harvest goes from November to March. So it was the right moment to call me, because I'm just first beginning to harvest at Finca El Manzano. We're picking at the lowest level of the farm. So right away, I'm like, okay, I need to get to work. So I approached this like, okay, we need different components for this. So one of the components to making an espresso is that you need a base to work with. You need body, you need chocolate, caramel notes on that, but also you need the sweetness, the certain things. So I thought, okay, I start at 1,300 meters and I go up to almost 1,600 meters at the farm. I'm gonna probably focus as the base for the 1,300 meter level, 1,400 meters, that's where I would get kind of like the caramel notes and some of the citrics, and all the way up, we're gonna get some of the aromas and better flavors. On the processing end, so I divided the farm in 3 for like kind of like the main components, but I also said, okay, if I want, I did 3 processes specifically for this coffee. So I did a fully washed, I did a pulp natural coffee, and I did a fully natural coffee. Again, this is December. I had a lot of time in front of us, or in front of me, to just play around with the processing and the harvesting. We did about 15 different batches of each one of those processes. So that was a lot of fun. And then in January, Leila came for about a week, right before Phil came. So by the time Phil came, in January. She had been there for almost like 4 days. She worked with our QC staff and just got to taste all the batches, walked the farm, got really familiar with our environment, and she really lived the farm. And I think, again, that's, this barista competitions is also a little bit of storytelling, and like, you cannot walk into a world stage without even knowing everything about the product that you're going to be talking about. So she did it very well, and she blended in very well as well. Phil came again 4 days after she was there. So first thing that Phil and I, or the three of us did, is that we started cupping the coffees. But we started cupping the coffees just like we would cup any coffee. But then I saw a little bit of difference there in the way that Phil and I were approaching the coffees, and also Layla had a few other things that pointed towards, hey guys, you guys are evaluating this just as a regular cupping. We need to focus on the espresso, on the beverage. So that was one of the really nice things to as a farmer and also as a roaster. We typically, again, are only evaluating coffees as they taste when you're just doing cupping. But this was a little different because we started playing with different degrees of roast and just blended it into or brewing it on the GS3 or in the Dalla Corte we have at the lab. So we have a full lab at the mill, which made things also a little easier because we were making decisions right there as well. And that's one thing that, again, needed to happen because they needed to take some of the coffee back because her regionals was, I think, the second week of February. So she really needed the coffee. So she packed 20 bags of each of the processes or of each of the coffees with her on her suitcase. And that's kind of like, I'm going to leave it to her on what she did with those bags. But all in all, that's kind of like what happened from the time that I got the call to the time that they left the country. Again, Delano's brought all their team as well, because just like I got all of our QC, marketing, farm, all our team together. They brought their sales team, they brought their marketing team, their QC team. So this was not just a 3-person thing. It was, we were using all the resources that we could and to make this happen. So I'm going to pass it on here to Layla probably. So
the first thing, to get to the national competition, you have to first place within the top 6 of your regional competition. So I landed back in Seattle after visiting Emilio's farm about 2 weeks before the Northwest Regional Barista Competition. In my suitcase, I had 20 pounds of 3 coffees, all 3 coffees from his farm, the different processes. And the plan was that we were going to roast that coffee, and about the end of that week, we were going to get a shipment of 2 bags of each of those coffees. Well, unfortunately, those bags showed up the day after the competition. So the coffee that I carried home in my suitcase that we had just 1 roast of was the coffee that I had to serve at the regional competition. Phil was freaking out. He was a little worried about the whole situation, but I knew that I was a good enough barista that I could dial in the coffee and that I had enough experience in competition that I could at least make the top 6. So I went into it very comfortably. It was the regional competition was held in Los Angeles, and I was comfortable. I would dial it in, we'd make top 6. But to all of our surprise, we ended up winning. So we won the Northwest Regional Barista Competition with coffee that was carried home in a suitcase, was 3 weeks past roast, and was just 1 experimental roast. So we were feeling pretty good at that point, which meant it was time to get ready for the United States Barista Competition.
So as Layla said, I was freaking out. And as a roaster, I know that it takes so much work to unlock the flavor that's in that coffee. And I think we were lucky that we came out of it with those first batches tasting pretty good. But there was a lot more work to do. I really had a lot more flavor that I wanted to unlock in these coffees. And the amount of work that went into dialing in these roasts is really hard to capture. By the end of this process, there were over 60 batches roasted of these 3 individual coffees. And we were roasting those coffees 2 times a week, and then we were tasting them daily. For a competition of this caliber, it's so finely tuned, the judges are so finely tuned into flavor that literally every single day off of roast, as that coffee off-gasses and the flavor evolves, we were trying to find that perfect ratio of degree of roast profile, as well as time off of roast, where that coffee could achieve the maximum flavor that we wanted to have. So this process for me was again, like I mentioned, a huge learning experience. You know, I've been roasting coffee for 14 years now, and it was actually really great to revisit that craft of roasting. It's been many years since I was a production roaster. I've moved more into the green coffee buying side of the business. And so to turn around and revisit that roasting and that craft and really re-engage that passion for flavor development, for the science of flavor development and how roasting is done was an awesome, awesome experience for me. So we were roasting coffee, we were tasting that coffee. One of the key things was that through this process, all 3 of us were involved, and one of the things that gave us a great advantage was that all 3 of us carry multiple expertises. So Emilio, we could contact Emilio, and I would contact him and say, hey, we roasted it like this, the flavor attributes that we got were this, we're looking to develop more sweetness, and Emilio, because of his knowledge of the entire industry and his knowledge of roasting, actually had valuable input to say, well, why don't you try stretching it out at this part of the roast, or why don't you try letting it off gas to this point? And the other thing that was really, really incredible was Layla's ability to communicate what she was looking for. So a roaster is only as good as the feedback that they get on the coffee that they're roasting. And Layla had a really uncanny way of putting into words exactly what flavor attributes she was looking for so that we could adjust roasts with an educated palate. And that was really a key to it all as well. So that collaboration that we had continued through the whole process. These batches were coming out. We would experiment with roasting lighter. When you went lighter, you would end up with a little bit more complexity, a little higher acidity, but sometimes you would lose some of the sweetness and some of the balance. And as you go darker in the roast, you developed more sweetness with these coffees, but you also developed a little bit more of that, what I like to call the roasty flavor in the finish, which Layla was always quick to point out. This is starting to taste, I taste a little bit of the roast in the finish on this. So we had to find that sweet spot, and with the roast, we actually ended up finding coffees, particular roasts of these 3 separate coffees that were different days off of roast and also different roast degrees, and then blending those together. So I think for the Barista Championship at the US, we actually had 2 different roasts. So two different roast profiles that were 11 days off of roast that were blended with 2 different roast profiles that were 3 days off of roast. And so you can imagine the way that we were tracking these when you're tasting daily, roasting twice weekly. It was a very intense process and took a very large investment of time and resources to do this. And a lot of people have questioned, what's the ROI on this? What's the return on investment? And while you can't track the actual return on investment, there's no doubt that it is huge. Our entire company at Delano's learned through this process. We learned more about what a world-class barista does and how they treat coffee. We learned more about how the elevation and process can impact the flavor of that coffee from Emilio. And we learned more about how to roast through this, through experimenting and tasting. So that's the beauty of something like this, that when you look at how does this equate into sales, sometimes it can be difficult to track. But when you look at how rich that experience is and the richness of the relationships, those reverberate through the entire company culture and absolutely equate into growth at a business level as well. So the roasting process, again, was incredible. In fact, when this entire process was over, one of the things that I thanked Layla for was really reawakening my passion for coffee roasting. It's been, like I mentioned, so many years since I've been on the machine roasting coffee, and I had moved so much into this green coffee world that it was great to revisit that. And I think that all of us can find areas in our expertise that maybe in the past we were more excited about this particular area of your expertise, but when you revisit it, you can approach it with a new awareness. We're constantly growing our awareness of how our industry impacts different areas. And so as you revisit those things that used to seem simple to you, a lot of times you can unlock new complexities to those processes.
So the next step was the United States Barista Competition. As Phil just talked about the whole roasting process that went into getting ready for this, there was a lot of things for me to do on my end. From the regionals to the nationals was 2 months. And I did not spend one waking moment not thinking about competition during this time. You can ask my boyfriend, it was a rough time. But I put everything into this. I have text message chains from Emilio and Phil, how they would just encourage me every single day, check in, how's things going, how's the coffee tasting, what do we need to do, what do you need from me? It was, although I was in Seattle, I was working on things myself, these guys were with me the whole way through, constantly encouraging, making sure that I was okay. I spent 2 hours in a training lab, Monday through Friday, for 2 months. I spent as much possible time as I could, while also working a full-time job, to dedicate to this. I read sports psychology books. I wanted to get mentally prepared for this competition. I have a notebook that every single day for 2 months I wrote, I am the United States Barista Champion. I was affirming what I wanted to make happen. There was so much energy and time and effort put into this, not only on my part, but these guys' part. Roasting, making sure everything was okay. One of the things that I used in my signature drink was a coffee cherry jam, and Emilio was at the farm making sure that that was going to be fresh for the USBC, and even so much as traveled to a different producing country to get fresh cherries for when it came down to the world competition. So we were all really, really working on this competition. The greatest thing about it, though, was that at the United States Barista Competition, all 3 of us were there. All 3 of us set up my station, got ready, we dialed in coffee together. We made sure that every step of the way, it was all 3 of us. It was never about just me and my competition. It was always about what are we doing as a team, how are we helping each other, and making sure that we were always really, really connected. Next, we have a little bit of video of us actually at the competition, getting ready for things. The first round, because we placed in first at the regional competition, it means that we got to go into the semifinals round immediately. So I didn't have to do the preliminary round. I got to go straight to the semifinals, and we got past the semifinals. So from 40 competitors, we went down to just 6. This is the announcements of making it to the finals. Oh. I think that ending part there in this picture of us all up there is a really important picture because all 3 of us are up there. And it was really, really important that the focus was not on me, the focus was on us, because this was a team effort and we were all up there together. When we won the USBC, if you could read our voices, we were saying, we're going to Italy. So from there, we went on to represent the United States in the World Barista Competition. It was held in Rimini, Italy, and we were there with 54 other countries to represent the United States, and we ended up placing 10th in the world. This was a huge accomplishment for us. We were very happy with our performance. Everything went wonderful while we were there. We had also a great time in Italy. It was fantastic. And Emilio's going to talk a little bit more about that.
So, world stage, Rimini, Italy. So, pretty much WBC for coffee industry, pretty much this is the biggest event in the industry related to coffee. There are SCA events that, 10,000 people go there, SCAE, big shows. But there's other industries in those events as well. WBC is centered on our product. It is the biggest event in the world. 54 countries, and actually, once we got there, I think what really took us there, and just like you guys heard our story, but there were three things pretty much that I think got us over there, and first is commitment. I think all three of us got into this process because we believed in it, but we're so committed to this from the very moment that we took on the challenge. Then we were engaged fully, not just committed, but we were doing things that took even longer than working hours. Many just off of our own free time. And then I think the third one, as I told you earlier, we had a leader, and I think that just made things flow a little better, and we had a plan, and she orchestrated that plan, and we just all had to execute our part, but in the end, she was on stage, and we were there together. These 54 competitors, they all have their own strategy. Some of them focus on their story, how they source their coffees, or what have they done in the coffee industry for this time, or the time that they've been in the industry. Some of them focus more on the different processes or the coffee itself, and some of them just they combine all things, processing, their story, and the coffee itself. And then in the technique, that's one of the biggest score winners in the competition is your technique. How legit are you? Some people have their own technique and the way they move around the bar. And I would say out of this 54 competitors, 5 or 7 max really source their own coffees. 5 to 7 max, I would say. Those 5 to 7, most of the time, or almost always, they're the first, or they're always in the semifinals. And out of the 6 finalists, I bet you 5 of them really source their own coffee. That's the only way that you can control what you're serving. That is the only way that you really are able to deliver what your story and your technique tells. That's the only way that you can make it happen to be in the finals. Out of the 54, I would say, as a farmer and as a Salvadoran, I'm very proud of this, and that actually it's a big opportunity to other producing countries. I would say that 5 to 8 coffees out of the 54 are Salvadoran coffees. Out of the 54, I would say 15 to 20 are centrals. What's up with the rest? I think everyone has a big chance to be there. I personally have visited and spent a lot of time in other countries, and everyone has a potential, and everyone, as long as you understand your product, as long as you work together with the barista, with the roaster, no matter where are you in the world. Obviously, you need altitude, you need good varietals to make it taste good, but every country, every producing country, I think, has the potential to go and to make it to this event, I think. So And then to kind of wrap it up and to sum everything together, I really, again, all three of us have been in, again, Roasters Guild, Barista Guild, part of the SCAA. We were used to already having challenges in front of us. Like every year at these retreats that we go to, the center thing that everything revolves around is a challenge. We have this Roasters Guild challenge. Baristas have their own Barista Guild challenge. So we were used to working as a team. We knew as well, and that's actually what, in the end, whatever personal interest we had on this, but I think we were representing our colleagues. We were representing our fellow farmers. We were representing roasters. We were representing these associations. We were representing our countries. And I think that's what got us so far into this thing. So just kind of like to wrap it up, I think we were ambassadors of our friends and of our colleagues and of our industry. And so I'm going to pass it.
The signature drink that you serve at a competition is your own unique drink that you make up. And that drink is supposed to tie into the coffee that you use or the story or the theme that you're creating. And so I wanted to show you guys a video of the last time that we performed together, which was the semifinals of the World Barista Competition. I wanted to show you guys the video of the signature drink that we served because I think it's we used it as a platform to express what we did together. And I think it's a really great way of showing you guys that. The first ingredient represents Emilio. Emilio is a 6th-generation coffee farmer. His family has owned El Manzano for over 150 years. Producing coffee is ingrained in him. But yet what I witnessed from him at the farm was innovations in processing, constant experimentation, and an eagerness to learn. Emilio, his farm, and those ripe red Bourbon cherries are the beginning of this story. So the first ingredient is a coffee cherry syrup. Emilio and his mother Margarita made this at the farm. They took 200 grams of the pulp from these coffees and they boiled it in water, 200 grams of water for 2 hours. And then they added 100 grams of a raw Salvadorian sugar. This is a very sweet syrup, which will remind you of that sweet washed. And it has a rich coffee fruit flavor, just like that natural. And I'm adding 13 grams of that. The next ingredient represents Phil. Phil really acts as a bridge between Emilio and I. He has been roasting Milo's coffees for years, but he took so much care and attention to roasting these 3 coffees, unlocking their potential for me to then serve to you. Phil allows for the continuation of this story. So the next ingredient that I'll be adding to represent the roasting process is smoke. That smoke is going to come from burning the wood of the coffee tree that grew these coffees. Now I'm going to place a piece of that coffee wood right in front of you. Go ahead and pick it up and smell it, and then place it back on your tray. You're going to notice that the coffee wood has an organic green coffee smell to it. So what I've done is dehydrated some of the wood, allowing for it to have a more pleasant aroma. The smell of this wood reminds me of Phil, Emilio, and I sitting at the farm around a campfire that was fueled by this same wood as we contemplated this very drink. So I'm going to burn that wood again using this smoke gun, and it's going to pipe the smoke into the vessel. And that smell is going to remind you of that savory pulp natural. And the last ingredient, the third ingredient, represents me, the barista. It is my job to acknowledge all of the hard work of Emilio and all of the hard work of Phil and make sure that that comes through to you. And in not just the way it tastes, but the way in which it is presented. It's my job to finish the story. So the last ingredient is the espresso. In the portafilter, I blended 10 grams of the first blend and 10 grams of the second blend that I served to you, meaning that this espresso is 1 part of each of the 3 coffees. Now, this drink is most apparently going to taste like espresso, but it's going to have new depth and complexity from the coffee cherry syrup. And the smoke is going to come through in the aromatics, but it's also going to give the drink a savory quality, which ultimately brings balance to the drink. Because I feel blind.
Now, I mentioned to you earlier, thank you, that the first time that the three of us tasted coffee together was at the farm. Well, the last time was just this morning, because Phil and Emilio are here with me today in the stands. We started this as a team, and we are here to finish this as a team. And although I am the barista, and I'm the one that gets to stand up here today and present to you, it was important to me to express that I did not get here alone. So thank you so much for being a part of our story. Enjoy.
So in the end, this story, our story, is about collaboration. 3 people, a barista, a roaster, and a producer working together towards one common goal. But unfortunately, that story is still a bit of a novelty. And so I want to challenge us as an industry, as we work towards building a world-class supply chain, that we would work on breaking down the barriers that our roles and our titles can create and work together as a team. Because when we do that, we can create and we can achieve really extraordinary things and create really extraordinary relationships. So our story's not finished yet, and our hope is that each one of you guys would join it. So thank you so much for your time.